Greetings, everyone. Namaste. It's Ashley here, and I am here, and you are here for another little tutorial on some beginner material, but also just sort of breaking down postures. The posture we're going to break down today is all fours, or in Sanskrit, it's referred to as Brahmanasana. All fours is a foundational posture that we build lots of stuff, on from. It's a transitional posture, going from one thing to the next. It is thought to be sort of a restorative posture too, used just to kind of help lengthen out the spine, work on things like core stability and strength, hand strength. I would even say hand wrist stability. It's a great place to sort of lengthen out so you can open up and find good breath. It's sort of the place whenever we offer folks some cat-cow work, but it can also present some challenges. I see people do it in a way that as an instructor seems right. I'm not going to read their mind, and I can't read inside of their body, but it will appear very uncomfortable and kind of borderline dangerous. I can sometimes just read by faces when we come to hands and knees that people are just, at the very least, not thrilled to be there, so they're not quite mindful of what their body feels like. And or how they're breathing. And then I see people that truly, as soon as I ask, hey, let's go ahead, find all fours, start coming in a tabletop position so that we can do this or that. They'll kind of give me that look like, I'm not. Or they'll start to do it, and they'll put down some support maybe, but they don't really commit to staying there. They have to come up and go back down. And to a certain degree, that's fine, but I'm hoping that those folks who come in person, and also if you're watching this, that I can provide you enough options so that one, you can sort of get there, be there, and then two, just adding on from one, that you can fully be where you are, that you don't have to shut things down to be in a posture, to make a shape. And then, 2.5, maybe find a way to where it feels not just accessible, but kind of good to come down. You know what I mean? It feels good to kind of go to all fours to regroup, or if you're in a faster class or in the midst of a vinyasa flow of some sort and you need to sort of take a breather or regroup, or relocate your breath, it feels to you like this is a good place to go to reset. Also, I'm gonna just say it, for a good majority of us, the older we get, the harder it is to get up and down, to get to the floor and come back up. Working on a tabletop position, it can be very beneficial for those sorts of issues, okay? So first thing I would say, if we were working on this on a yoga mat or on a surface, I would ask that you dress in a way to where things aren't going to be slipping and sliding. You know what I mean? So that your body can at least feel held and sturdy while you're doing this with or without props. Then props, a blanket. I just have my bolster here, just because it's pretty much always nearby. But the blanket, or maybe a couple blankets, or maybe a knee pad, would be helpful. Maybe an area when you're first practicing this, or when you do your practice, is carpeted, or a thicker yoga mat. I oftentimes, because I tell people, switch out, swap out. Know that you don't have to run out and buy a yoga blanket. Maybe like a quilt of some sort, or sort of a rough and tumble kind of blanket that you would use outside on the lawn. And then as far as like a knee pad goes, I mean, if you've ever seen sort of those garden knee pads, it's perfect. And there's all kinds of fancy things that you can go to Amazon and type in like yoga knee pad, and they'll give you all sorts of options there. But I'm sort of old school, or the way I got started was I just grabbed what I had on hand. Okay, so without any props, I'm going to show you sort of, well, the shape of my body, but as far as stacking and what we're looking for, what that might look like. So I wanted to come side profile here so you can see. Now, you step it on back and make sure, of course, I wore this, and now it's going to be falling down all over the place, right? All right, let me make sure. This is probably one of the only moments where I'm like, yay, I can see myself on a camera, hooray, because I can check my alignment here. So coming down to my hands and knees here without support is accessible for me, okay? So I've determined that much. I feel very lucky in a lot of ways, okay? But when I'm down here, another thing I wanna make sure of is that I've got proper length in my neck, and that as I start to bear weight down through, I would even step these guys up a little bit. As I start to bear weight down through fingers, palms, right, my knees, even the feet a little, does everything feel safe, supported, no pain, no pinching? If that's the case, this is my table pose, okay? And this is where I could maybe, work on things like cat cow, okay? My balancing table, okay? That kind of stuff. Side plank work. I mean, the list goes on and on. Coming up to downward facing dog, lowering down, coming into a child's pose, whatever. Now, I have these big floppy long feet, so tops of the feet flat feels good for my body. Some people prefer and or just they kind of need to keep their toes tucked. It's still table pose, okay? Still Brahmanasana. Feet, as long as you feel safe and supported, still the same thing. Now, if my hands came down here, okay, and I had what I call paws or claws, right? All of us that drive or type all day, we've got the hands that when I spread my fingers are like, right? I always tell clients, no, huge hands, okay? When you come down, you want to open your hands, all right? None of this scrunching, okay? And that's just, if you're gonna use your hands to hold you, okay? Now, in some cases, whether it's the hands, the wrists, forearms, wherever, that's not gonna work. So you can find fists, okay? You can come down to the fists here, stack it up to where now my fists are pretty much right below my shoulders, okay? And this works. I can also come down to my forearms, all right? So my forearms here, you'll see palms face down, all right? My forearms are down, flat. Let me step these guys forward. When I refer to these guys, I mean my knees, okay? My shoulders are over my elbows, okay? My neck would lengthen forward. My gaze would be just between my thumbs. This is forearm tabletop, but it's a great place to go for table if you want to do a little cat-cow or explore the lengthening or work on your child's pose. Coming down to forearms is still table pose. I like to remind folks of that. Now, I didn't really say it in the beginning, but it is important, okay? Whenever you're coming down to this, I'm gonna take this over and so you can see the side. Now, when I come down to my table, knees underneath my hips, I can make this nice long line, okay? Hip creases, hip bones down to the knees. If I look between my knees, my low legs, for the most part, are parallel to each other. So I can't even see my legs or my feet, okay? I've checked that, check. Fingers spread, check. Neck lengthening forward, check. Shoulders, right, over my wrist for the most part, unless that's too much pressure, and then I would step the hands out a little, okay, or even forward just a little bit. Now, I want you to notice if this happens. So it's like you're almost cat pose, but it's not intentional. It's what I call you're just kind of letting the guts fall out, Remember I talked about how this is a great place for lengthening, it's a great place for core stability? Well, you would need to engage the core a little. So what you'd need to do is, if this was you and you're like, yeah, but this just feels more natural. Trust me, I get it. I'd press through my fingers, I'd pull my chest up, my belly up, I'd lower my front ribs just a little. And when I teach kiddos, I say, imagine your back is flat enough to serve dinner there. Like someone could enjoy a nice, relaxed dinner on your back and nothing would fall out. Now my low belly started to fall out there, so I pulled my belly button up, and there is sort of a posterior tilt on my pelvis, right? This is anterior, it's like cat, anterior. This is your posterior, it's like I'm almost going cat pose back there. Or no, this is cow, this is cat, okay? So this, if I have like this here, I see this a lot. People are like, I can do it, but oh my God, my low back is yelling at me. I can't drop it. I can't untuck the tail, right? Well, you can soften the belly down a little, right? You can soften it down a little. And then maybe you can kind of squeeze the booty just a bit. See what I mean? Now, I mentioned the blanket, the knee pads, all the different props, equipment you can purchase. As far as supporting, that would be for under the knees, but also putting a blanket like this could be helpful under the knees and or the wrists. So you might need to take the hands, and as you can see, my fingers are kind of spilling forward, right? But this kind of forces me to use the knuckles and the pads of the fingers here. And I've got a nice bit of elevation as far as wrists go, okay, or the heels of my hands. Now, if I wanted, I could, for me, okay, you'd have to open yours up, stack them, find what works, what feels best. For me, I can find that support at my hands, the heels of the hands, and at my knees. And if I was just kind of feeling a little not all about it as far as the sensation's concerned, support, then I would slap this guy under here. Now I could also, if I was like, yeah, the wrist don't, it's not that bad, I just stacked this again, right? And I made that, right, just a little bit softer, and I made it just a little more accessible. Now if I wanted, maybe I'd tuck a toe or two, you know what I mean? And that just feels better. You have to decide, how can you be in your tabletop position to where you can actually be there? If you catch yourself having to hold your breath, if you catch yourself going, but my right knee feels like it's going to shatter, always know you can take breaks. You're never stuck there, okay? But is there some sort of adjustment that could be made, okay? Could you actually maybe use something under your hands? Do you need to maybe come to the fist for a second, or even just kind of stretch out, turn the hands around and take a couple, wrist stretches, okay? The open, close, maybe just kind of the circling the wrists out, okay? Maybe you're real stiff in the shoulders and the neck and you need to do a little bit of the shrugging and the rolling before you go there. Be willing to get curious about the state of your body before you put it in this pose and expect it to stay there, breathe there, and for you to be present during it. Grace, compassion. I didn't just drop onto a yoga mat or whatever I was using at the time. It was probably just my carpet. And just magically, I was in tabletop position. Hooray! Okay. It took practice. And if I forget myself, if I'm not being mindful, then I have a harder time there. So I would just, once again, I would ask you, when you do these things, right, be curious, have an open mind, but remember that loving heart. Show yourself and your body, right, the same love that you would show somebody outside of you that you love, that care, that support. All right, and that's it for Tabletop. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to spend with me, with yourself, and your practice, right? It all adds up, and it's important. Namaste.